Travis Wayne gets home. So, Mormons, you don't believe, go away. You don't believe. So why are you here? This is for believers. And you won't leave, will you? You'll put a thumbs down, then you'll leave. You will not give me my religious freedom, will you? Oh, because it's Joseph Smith in the Book of Mormon? And it's not your interpretation, so it's obviously wrong. You've corrected the founder. Joseph was wrong, so you had to correct him? Get the hell out of here. So, yeah, those of you who are believers, I have to repeat this, because if I had any followers, they already know this information. Why is nobody following me? I have a whole ton of subscribers, but nobody's actually following. Weird. Okay, so Isaiah gives a prophecy. For unto us a child is born, unto us a son is given, and the government shall be upon his shoulder. And his name shall be called Wonderful Counselor, the Mighty God, the Everlasting Father, the Prince of Peace. There's Prince. Anybody remember my video? Oh, right, nobody follows me. Nelson, in conference, botched the definition of Israel. The Tsar in Israel is Prince. It gives it to you right there in Genesis with the change of the name. So the author is telling you the meaning of it. And so the story context as well. Jacob is now the bloodline for the Christ, the Prince of Peace, the Son who is to be born on the throne of David. He's a descendant of David. So in the story, who's the son of David? Solomon, the King of Peace. Peace is salam. And depending on which language you have, it will be adjusted. And depending on additional attachments to it, also changes the vowels. But none of that was the original. Paleo-Hebrew was, the vocabulary was determined by the pictures that were used, not the phonetics. And so I really don't care if I get the phonetics wrong, because everybody's going to claim I'm wrong because they have their unique phonetics to their language. And so, for example, Mohammed bin Salman, the king of Saudi Arabia, it's Salman rather than Solomon. It's the same word, it's just pronounced differently. And so this is the prophecy, because Isaiah supposedly is after King David, because this is when the right before the northern tribes deported by Assyria, and what would become it's right on the tip of my tongue, and it's slipping my mind. The parable of the Good Samaritan. There it is, Samaritans. They were a result of that deportation of northern Israel. And so I've gone over with you Paleo-Hebrew for Salem, which, yes, is in Jerusalem. In the archaeological record, it was originally called just Salem, peace. And when it was just a little hamlet there on the top of the hill. And so, with the N at the end of it for Solomon, is why I say King of Peace. And it's because of the N, as I deciphered Paleo-Hebrew, so I know what I'm talking about here, is what's called a suffix determinative, in which persons are designated as kings, and land is designated as kingdom. So Jershon, yeah, it's kingdom, because it's a place. Babylon, place. But that one's a little bit tricky, because people start to think that Babel is Babylon. No, it was Lebanon. Lebanon. But nonetheless, that sounded like a gunshot. Isn't that great? In a new apartment, and already the gang's all here. Dear God, you're supposed to be sleeping now. The gangs have their final hour at 4 in the morning, because at 5 you have to be finished, because people are getting up and getting ready for work. So, yeah. Oh boy. And so, this is the prophecy. And it's in Isaiah 9:6, and it's in the Book of Mormon, 2 Nephi 19:6. And he gives us the name in another passage of Emmanuel. But there is another connection that is important here for us. So in Deuteronomy, we have the Jewish Christ also indicated here. It's in chapter 18, and Joseph Smith likewise refers us to this, as he has us go to Acts first, because there's more stuff in Acts for us to know. But Lord God will raise up unto thee a prophet from the midst of thee, of thy brethren, like unto Moses. So the man like Moses. So Moses is a part of this. And this is confirmed with Jeremiah chapter 23. In verse 5, behold, the days come, saith the Lord, that I will raise unto David a righteous branch, and a king shall reign and prosper, and execute judgment and justice in the earth. In his days, Judah shall be saved. Was Judah saved during the Roman period of time? I'm hearing Mormon crickets. And Israel shall dwell safely. Mormon crickets. And so, Lord our righteousness. Therefore, behold, the days come, saith the Lord, that they shall no more say, the Lord liveth, which brought up the children of Israel out of the land of Egypt. Who brought up the children of Israel out of the land of Egypt? The Lord Moses. He's the Christ of the Jews. the man like Moses. So here he is, verse 8. But the Lord liveth, which brought up and which led the seed of the house of Israel out of the north country and from all countries whither I have driven them. The keys of Moses. See, Mormons don't believe. And so when Joseph Smith says, in section 107, verse 91, and again, the duty of the president of the office of the high priesthood is to preside over the whole church, and to be like unto Moses. They don't believe this. Even Nelson doesn't believe it. Nelson did a photo op taking the keys of Peter for the presidency. And so, Nelson, no, these aren't his keys. He is not the leader of the church. At least in Joseph's church. This is not Joseph's church. In Joseph's church, Joseph Smith had the keys of Moses to be the president of the church. And so you go to the Kirtland Temple in 110, and then you have all these Christs appearing with the different names. Elijah, God Yah. Jehovah, Yah, the Creator God. And Elias, which is actually Elishua, as I've gone over with you. That's Jesus, the God of salvation. Not Jehovah. Jehovah is not Jesus. Joshua is Jesus. And there are no Joshua appearing here. And so Elias is the closest to Jesus. And did I say Elijah? God Yah? Yeah. And so Moses. Verse 11. After this vision closed, the heavens were again opened unto us. So it's not real. All of this is not real. That's what that means. Don't take it literal. This is another visionary account that should technically be added to Joseph Smith's 1838 visionary account. But Moses appears, gives the keys of the gathering of Israel. I just read it to you from Jeremiah. It's the latter-day Christ, as understood by the Jews and understood by Joseph Smith. The second vision. You have to put it all in context. You can't take it out of context. You can't put Jesus in here. Jesus is not in here. Jesus did not come to Joseph Smith. Jesus is Joshua. The closest thing is Elias. So don't put Jesus in here. He did not come. This was Passover. This was not Easter Passion Week. This is Passover. It was the third day of Passover when this occurred. And so, yeah, Joseph Smith also tells us exactly who this Christ is. In section 103, verse 16, talking about the redemption of Zion, which means the latter days. So we're going to see about the Christ of the latter days. Therefore, I will raise up. Oh, from Deuteronomy. Here it is, the man like Moses. Unto my people. A human who will be a Mormon. But Joseph Smith's church is gone. Oh, he's going to be born in the great and abominable church of Jesus. Who shall lead Mormons, like as Moses led the children of Israel. See what Joseph Smith is doing here? The whole of scriptures have to do with Mormons, and not a single Mormon believes. For Mormons are the children of Israel and of the seed of Abraham, and must be led out of bondage by power and with a stretched out arm. And as your fathers were led at first, man like Moses, even so shall the redemption of Zion be. But Mormons missed the Exodus. It was in 2020. Book of Mormon told us it was supposed to be 2020. Lehi left Jerusalem 600 years after the first year of the reign of King Zedekiah. Or the Messiah was supposed to come. Screwed that one up, didn't I? And so, no, there is no Jesus. He wasn't born in 4 CE. That's absurd. It's 1 CE on April 6th. No. The Book of Mormon is being tricky. They're giving you the date of the Exodus. Lehi leaves. Exodus. And so the 600 years leads you to 8 April 4 CE, when a solar eclipse occurred over Russia. We're straying away from the topic, but yeah. It's 20 years before 8 April 2024, the final day of the latter days that starts the millennial reign for Zion. Thus 2020 was supposed to be the Exodus, and Mormons missed it. And so now the floodwaters have crashed in after Moses parted them for you. The Green River exit. I did the videos that year. On the I-70, that was our path back to Zion. And you missed it. But Mormons aren't watching, so who am I talking to? And so David is in Paleo Hebrew is the double D's, Delta. And so the Star of David is that very symbol. Now Emmanuel, as Joseph Smith tells us in section 107 as well, is Amen, and was the original name of the priesthood. Before his day, Melchizedek, it was called the Holy Order after the order of Emmanuel, Son of God. Remember? Salem, Solomon, David, descendant of David, man like Moses. David, Moses. And so Emmanuel. And so the symbol of Emmanuel is, what is that symbol? It too is right on the tip of my nose. I mean, tongue. Why did I say nose? What would that symbol be? Yes, it's the same symbol, but with the universal symbol of the sun around David. The Star of David also being the sun for Amen. Thus Father Amen, Son Amen. In case you're unfamiliar with Adam Ondai, Amen. That is the name of our Christ, and it is his surname, because remember, he's human and he's a Mormon. And so the Jews are believing that King David became the king of the united Israel, and had his kingdom and there on the throne of Jerusalem. But the temple, as we are told, was not built there until Solomon, the King of Peace. The temple was not built until Solomon. I'm teaching you guys something. Are you paying attention? And Solomon is the latter-day Christ. And the temple was not built until Solomon. Do I need to go to 3 Nephi chapter 11 again? We should refer to it anyway here, because all of you are new. Nobody's following me. And so, after the destruction, remember, Book of Mormon, not literal history. Learning of the Jews, it's a manner of prophecy, a book of revelation of the latter days. Just like King David with Solomon, just like Moses. There are revelations. Now it came to pass that there was a great multitude gathered together of the people of Nephi. Who appeared to Joseph Smith in the second vision? How was he described? Sun at noonday. Learning of the Jews, language of the Egyptians? Hold that thought. Round about the temple, which was in the land of Bountiful. That was also the name of the place that Lehi settled in Saudi Arabia. And they were marveling and wondering one with another, showing to one another the great marvelous change which had taken place. They were also conversing about this Jesus. Jesus. Are we sure it's Jesus? Learning of the Jews? Of whom the sign unto us is a sign given, but this is the sign of his death. It's a sign in the heavens. What is the sign of his death? Revelation 19 tells us. Samson tells us. Samson, Sun King. And at the end, remember? King. So the stories of Samson, the Sun King, have deaths. Signs of the death of the Sun King. Yeah, those are solar eclipses. And what dies refers to the constellation, except for Samson. Because Samson, he dies, but he takes down the Philistines. It's the death of the great and abominable church at the temple. Bruce. He puts building. Come on, Bruce. The pillars of the temple. He couldn't do it. Just like in section 1, verse 16, he couldn't decode Babylon. Why can't you decode Babylon, Bruce? The church comes out and says, hey, we decoded everything. Everything's fine now. We can now take it literal. Who's Babylon, Bruce? It's the great and abominable church. And who's the great and abominable church? The church with Jesus as the Christ. And so, yes, 8 April 2024. That's this right here. This is the start of the millennium. And who becomes the king of the Nephites? Oh, it's Jesus, right? He reigns for a millennial reign of peace. No, Jesus comes from outer space. and makes Nephi the king. Nephi. And so 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, Nephi, with the Jewish version of 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, kings. In our King James Version, we have it as 1st and 2nd name of God. What's the name of God again? To avoid the too frequent repetition of the name of God, we use Melchizedek. Amen. Shem, Sam, is the name, the hidden name. And so Shem is Melchizedek. If you've understood that from the lectures on faith, that publication had that in there, inserted in. That's how. You're not supposed to take it literally. And so the story of Noah, his son Shem, that's Amen. And sure enough, it's from the Egyptian Ogdod story. It's a creation story, different than the creation story of Heliopolis, which is Genesis chapter 1. They're using Egyptian documents in the Bible? That's strange. So when Matthew says that the latter days would be like the days of Noah, interesting. And Noah is on an ark that lands on the dry land of a mountaintop. Top of the mountains? Hey, that's Utah. Started the ministry as in Utah? In 2017, according to John's Revelation chapter 12. And Matthew also tells us when Christ was born in Judea. It's not his birthday. That's the beginning of the ministry in Utah. Because remember, he's a Mormon, to save Mormons from the great and abominable church, which are in Utah. The names are purposely teaching us things. And so, there's an interesting connection to all of this, as Joseph Smith also tells us about it, concerning Moses in the Doctrine and Covenants. Took Moses out midst, section 84. See, Moses was trying to teach, according to Joseph Smith here in section 84, about the mysteries of the kingdom. Mysteries comes from the Greek word mysterion, which is translated as initiatories. So when we go to the temple, we have our washings and anointings in the initiatories. Anoint is Christ in Greek. So the mysteries, the initiatories, are to make humans Christs, to anoint them. So yes, as a Mormon, the prophecies are that the Mormon Christ will be anointed in the Los Angeles Temple of Angels. I've done the videos. And so thus the ordinances thereof, which priesthood? Priesthood of Emmanuel, Amen, the sun god at noonday, which I still can't remember that symbol. What is that symbol? But I don't know, maybe I'll figure it out. The power of godliness Amen, is manifest. You become Christ. You take upon yourself the name of Christ. That is your new name, even though the church gives you some other name. But I've done the videos to show you that, yeah, even the church knows, and they're mocking it, because they don't believe in the man like Moses. They believe in Jesus. Nonetheless, President Benson, it was during his time when Mormon would have gone at his temple initiatories to become Christ for his 19-year-old mission. Because I told you, 17 March 1970. 1870. Dear God. That's his date, according to prophecy. When did you think Christmas was? You got to think in the 10-month calendar system, which is not a 12-month calendar system, and you have to then do the conversion into our calendar system. So Decem 25th is 17th of March. So it's a little different than the Friday the 13th for the Knights Templar, that it was on a Thursday in that calendar system, and then in the 1700s it got changed by Pope Gregory to the Gregorian calendar that we utilize. So now it's on Friday instead of Thursday, just because we changed the calendar. And so yes, December 25th, under the Roman period calendar of 10 months, that's why Septem, Octem, Novem, Decem were the 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th months. They were not the 9, 10, 11, and 12 months. That's not the meaning of the Latin words. And so then you also have to factor in a lunar calendar, because you're now thinking, well, wait, Travis, there's January and February before you even get to March. Think lunar. And so, yeah, there's even more that needs to be discussed. But, yeah, Moses failed to teach this to the house of Israel. And so in the Lord's wrath, they could not enter into his rest while in the wilderness. And which rest is the fullness of his glory. Whose glory? Celestial glory of the sun. Sun God, Amen, at noonday. Because that's what Amen means in Egyptian, is the sun at noonday. Even though John in Revelation 19 does get it correct, that it's the hidden name. And so yeah, there's Egyptian stories about his hidden name, and a cow goddess, Hathor, who goes on a drunken spree to murder humans after learning his name. And so therefore he took Moses out of their midst and the Amen priesthood, and had the Aaronic priesthood. So there is historical precedence for this in the Egyptians. It's the 18th dynasty, which just happens to be called the David-Moses dynasty. See, Moses isn't an actual name. It means, from the Egyptian, transliterated, born of, son of. And so, yes, the author does seem to understand it by naming him Moses, because he was born out of the water. Had nothing to do with the water, but being born. That's Moses. That's the meaning of it. And so, who were you born of? Well, that's why another name needs to be attached to Moses, which is the Greek form. Mose is the Egyptian form in Egyptian. And so the 18th dynasty is the David-Moses dynasty, born of David. Who was born of David? Solomon, wasn't it? The King of Peace, who was the Prince of Peace as a baby before he took the throne to become the King of Peace. Seeing how this is working? If only I could remember that symbol. So frustrating. And so, yes, Akhenaten is the one who removed the Amun priesthood and replaced it with the Aten priesthood, which is the sun disk rather than the sun at noonday. It's similar to Ra. Ra is the name of the sun that is the sun that we see in the day. But Amun is the name specifically for the sun at noonday. And then Kefre is the morning sun. Atum is the evening sun. And then the sun battles Apophis, the serpent, in the evening and in the nighttime on his solar bark. There's the big fight. And then he wins and conquers, and then he's born again with his son, who is born and rises. That is the morning sun that John talks about in Revelation. That is not the same son of the morning that Isaiah speaks of regarding Lucifer. That is Venus. That is the star that never ascends to the noonday position. Now, obviously it does, but we can't see that it does because of who? Amun, the rightful king. Once he rises, Venus can't do it. And why? Well, you'd have to remember your astronomy from grade school. It's because Venus and Mercury are within our solar system from where we are on Earth. So they are closer to the sun. And so as we see them on Earth, they're always in a close proximity to the sun. And so, yes, we will see Venus in the morning before sunrise, and we will see Venus in the evening before or after sunset. Or we'll never see them at all because they're too close to the sun. But never will we see Venus in the night sky in the southern hemisphere. Never. Can't be done. Venus has to be removed out of her place and moved outside of the solar system from where we are located. You know, like Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, etc. These need to be understood so that you understand the scriptures properly. That's why Lucifer is assigned to it, because he is the usurper, but he is to fall. He will not get his millennial kingdom. Right? Right? great and abominable churches to fall. Right? 60 Minutes did a good job. That could be the blow that does it. And here the church was worried it was me that was going to do it. You've successfully kept people away from me. Don't know why they're so paranoid about me. And so, yeah, that's the fun little thing as to how it all ties together with the Egyptians. And it's too bad the Jews don't even believe this, because they have this stigma that they're Babylonian rather than Egyptian, when it's the Babylonians who took them hostage into Babylon. And they then come out of captivity, and they're now saying that they're Babylonian, and they've changed the language to Babylonian, and they've changed their calendar to Babylonian, they've changed their holy days to Babylonian. What's up with that, Jews? So, yeah, but this symbol was prior to that. Without fail, there are so many anti-Semites out there. So yes, if the Jews actually knew and trusted in their origins, that's why they're the chosen ones. This is because of our shared ancestry with the Egyptians, specifically of the 18th dynasty. And it was David Moses IV who got word of a Hittite invasion that had taken occupation of the land down to Armageddon, the mountain of Megiddo, Har-Megiddo. And Har is the Egyptian word for Horus, the son of Osiris, who was murdered, who then restores the throne of his father, Horus, son Amen, son of David. And mountain, yeah, Utah, pyramids, David, sun, they all play a part in it. Noah's Ark, mountaintop. And so all of these play into the story. And so thus the primordial mound from Genesis chapter 1, that's Horus. That's the personification of Horus, or Son Amen, as it's also known as. And and so he goes up to push them back into Turkey to reclaim the land. And he gets to the valley of Armageddon. And spies tell him that the Hittites are hoping to lure him into the valley to lay a trap for him. They're going to butcher them. It's lambs to the slaughter. And so, because of the intel that he received, he decided to do something else. He took the long way into the mountains with his whole troops and came around through the side for a sneak attack. And it worked. But the battle did last a long time, though. You know, this isn't where you just drop a few bombs and mission accomplished. They're on chariots. You know, it's humans doing battle. And so it took some time, but eventually they did win. And they took the spoils from the other soldiers. But during the battle, King David Moses IV decided to go on vacation. This is all documented in the history books. And he goes to the mountain top of Salem, as it was known then. So are you familiar with David and his mother? No. So now you can understand what the author was doing in writing the story. It had nothing to do with literal history, but he was utilizing actual history to tell his prophecy. And so the prophecy shares a lot of the historical connections, but reveals the latter days. Because the latter days, according to John, is Armageddon, the battle for the land, Jerusalem, the new Jerusalem. Because David is said to have not been allowed to build a temple because he was a bloody man. And so it was Solomon who then built the temple. You see how all this is working together here? They all talk about the same thing, just different stories to tell it. And so, yeah, Bathsheba, the wife of Uriah, and he wants to fight in the battle. And so, yeah, in order to cover up the adultery, he sent him to the front lines, and he died. And so the prophet, man like Moses, condemns him for being a bloody man. Mars, the god of war, which is exactly the same meaning as Russell Marion. So now do you see how that was working? David in that particular case is the false king. And Nathan comes to him and condemns him, just as Moses condemned Pharaoh, who would have been David Moses. See how this is all working? There's a bit of history involved, but they're altering it to prophesy. Isn't this fun? It's too bad Mormons don't believe. Right, Mormons? Oh, I don't have anybody watching now. And so, yeah, that's how the whole thing got started. Because sure enough, after King David visited Salem, King David Moses IV, they did go on to build the temple and a palace in the name of King David, who visited them, who owned the land. Because Salem was tributary to Egypt under the David Moseses. It was never an independent nation. All the kings of Israel have always been tributary to some other government. At first it was Egypt, until around 700, when Assyria deported northern Israel, and then thus gave tribute to Assyria, and then Babylon for Judah. And then the Greeks, with Cleopatra, Alexander and Cleopatra, made way to conquer Egypt, to make them tributary to the Greeks. Ta-da! Because the Persians got close, but there are battle stories that the Egyptians were able to hold back the Persians. But then Alexander the Great So yeah, there's the story of Alexander the Great and the mountains of Armenia to hold back the Russians from Armageddon. Thus Ezekiel 38. Gog and Magog, the war of Russia in Ukraine. Will bring about Jesus, Bruce? Is that who you think is coming? Jesus, huh? So yeah, the names are significant, but they are all about Emmanuel. And Joseph Smith says, yeah, Mormon. To free Mormons from the great and abominable church. Cool.